This is Political Capital.
Senator Bayh, thanks for joining us on Bloomberg. You said after Massachusetts it was a wake-up call, should be a wake-up call for Democrats and Obama. What's the one or two things that the party could do to show it gets it?
Well, the first thing we can do, Al, is to deal with the fiscal issue. If you look at, in Massachusetts, we lost independents 3 or 4 to 1. We lost them in New Jersey. We lost them in Virginia. They're the swing voters in our country. They're concerned about rising deficits, the fiscal issue. And it feeds into this animosity toward Washington because on a personal level, people say, well, wait a minute, I got to balance the family checkbook. I'm making do with a little less now. Why can't the government do the same thing? So some spending discipline, earmark reform, that's one of the things we can do. Obviously, health care is a big part of this. That's a longer conversation.
Let me get to health care in a minute. If the president's calling for a tax on big banks and wants to limit their size in trading, is that the right move?
Could be. I don't know all the details yet. The size issue, if you're going to be globally competitive, size does become something of an issue. And if we artificially constrain the size of American banks, I wonder how well they can compete.
So you have reservations about his proposal?
I want to see the details. I want to see the details. On the proprietary trading and that sort of thing, I think there may be something to that, and I'll tell you why, Al. It's one thing if the banks want to trade with their own capital and put their own money at risk. I got no problem with that. Right. That's the American way. But if directly or indirectly the American taxpayer is backstopping those activities, if they go wrong, well, that's a different issue. And it seems to me the taxpayers then have a right to be involved
in setting some of the rules.
Well, now, if you're going to go the tax route, I think the best way to do it would be to straight up and say, look, these folks paid us back with interest, the investment we made in them. But as we all know, we got a huge budget deficit we've got to deal with. They were the indirect beneficiaries of our action, and we're still, as a country, dealing with some of the consequences of some of their ill-advised activities. So they do have a responsibility and a role here in helping to clean up some of this mess over and above just what we lent to them. I think that would be the straight-up way to deal with it.
Another economic issue. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke seems caught in the whiplash of politics and finance these days. You voted for him in committee. Will he be confirmed?
I think he will. I think you'd have a very adverse reaction in the markets if he was not. But the populist fever that's out there today and raging very high seems to have touched upon him, judging by some of the comments in my own caucus. He, in some ways, has become a symbol, unjustly, in my opinion.
Do you?
I'd say, look, and I've talked to him directly. He'll admit he made mistakes. Everybody involved in this made mistakes, up and down the line, regardless of party, private sector, public sector. You name it. Public has a right to be mad. The question, though, is not who's perfect. The question is who is best positioned at this moment in time to help continue to get us out of this mess. And did the man learn the lesson? And I think he did, and I think he's best positioned to kind of continue to put us on the right path.
Do you have confidence in the Obama economic team, Tim Geithner and Larry Summers?
I do. They're both very knowledgeable. I've known Larry for a long time, and I know Tim a little bit, but Larry better. I know he's wants to head us on a better fiscal path. Tim had to get his sea legs under him in terms of public statements and dealing with Congress, but then again, dealing with Congress is an art form very few people have mastered. So I do. I think they're thoughtful people. They want to head us in the right direction. They're good people.
Speaking of dealing with Congress, what should Congress do about health care, which you mentioned earlier? Try to pass the Senate bill, move to a scaled-back version that focuses just on insurance reform, or just start all over?
My guess is what we need to do here is to look for some of those things where there is consensus. Insurance companies are competing across state lines, for example. Subsidies to small businesses to bring down the cost of insurance for their employees. If there are things we can do to reform the health insurance market with pre-existing conditions and lifetime caps, that's harder. But if there are things that can be done there, we should look to do those there.
So the scaled-back version.
Well, look, people have forgotten, there was a bill that passed out of the Senate Finance Committee that had a Republican vote, Olympia Snowe. For some reason, that was just jettisoned and not considered. We had to go look back and ask ourselves, well, why was it that at least one Republican was willing to step forward and support that proposal? But just ramming it through on a solely partisan basis, particularly if you're using reconciliation, boy, I think that would be very difficult. And, one of the lessons out of Massachusetts was, you got to listen to us. We want you people to work together. No backroom deals, no special deals. All those, by the way, Al, those got to be taken out of the bill.
Are you going to vote against the increase in the debt ceiling?
What I'm looking for are credible and enforceable steps to rein in our budget deficit. As you know, we're debating a commission to get the deficit down. Now, ordinarily, I'm sure your viewers are the same way. I'd say, commission, come on, that's just an excuse for not doing anything. But there is a precedent here with the so-called BRAC Commission that allowed us to downsize the military. Yes, nobody wanted to close their local military base. So if you voted on them one at a time, you'd never close any of them. But if you put it all together and said, look, this is right for the country, we got it done.
You met, as I understand it, this week with Peter Orszag and Tim Geithner and Joe Biden about this very subject. Will the proposal that's going to come forth, will it be like the Base Closing Commission, where Congress, well, there will be a simple up or down vote in Congress on any deficit?
There should be, Al. And that's what I'm fighting for. I think the president is going to come out and support this.
And support that up or down vote.
And it's going to be very illustrative. You know, I don't think it's going to get passed for two reasons. Number one, some of the big spenders in my own party or people who care about their committee jurisdiction aren't going to go for it. And those on the right in the Republican Party have figured out, you know what? Allowing the Democrats to be more fiscally responsible right now may not be in their political interest, so Mitch McConnell and some of his group are going to oppose it.
So you're for it, you think the president will propose it, but you don't think it'll get through the Senate?
Getting 60 votes will be very hard. I think he'll then come forward with an executive commission, which is not as good, but at least is a step in the right direction. I'll tell you what I'm really looking for, because a commission will work through the rest of this year. It's critically important for long-term entitlement reform and all that kind of thing. But we can do something right here, right now, starting next week. The president can say in his State of the Union address, I'm going to include in my budget a freeze on discretionary spending. I'm drawing the line in the sand, and I'm willing to use my veto pen to enforce that.
Do you think he'll do that?
Not 10 months from now, not 2 years from now, but right now.
Do you think he'll do it?
I think there's a fighting chance that he will.
You do?
That's what I'm looking for.
Let me ask you one final political question. You were undefeated in Indiana politics. Republicans, however, say your poll numbers have plummeted.
It's a statistical anomaly.
Well, they say your poll numbers are down, and they're trying to get Congressman Mike Pence, the hero of the Tea Parties and social conservatives, to run against you. Are you more politically vulnerable now?
Oh, I think it's a more challenging environment for every incumbent, Al, no question about that, and probably more for Democrats than Republicans. But the reports of my poll numbers having declined are not accurate. I can tell you that from direct knowledge. And the final thing I'd say is Scott Brown, the guy up in Massachusetts who's the hero of the Tea Party movement, in one of the debates, he said, I want to go to Washington, D.C. and be an independent voice for Massachusetts, a lot like Evan Bayh.
Well, that's why he's undefeated in Indiana. Senator Bayh, thank you so much for being with us. And when we come back, we'll take a closer look at the president's latest proposal to take on Wall Street.
Tonight on Bloomberg, actress Gabby Sidibe, the breakout star of Precious. Watch Charlie Rose at 8 p.m. and 10 p.m.